I would like to start by saying I didn't put together this PowerPoint. You have a really great team with Extension that's put a lot of time into developing this succession plan training. And this quote reads, "The single most important part of the succession plan is having one. Oh. And the most important step is getting started." So when we went around the room, it sounded like not everybody has started tonight, but by coming here today, you have. So you can give yourselves a pat on the back because that is, in my eyes, probably the most difficult step to do is to actually get started. And I think we can all agree that a farm or ranch business is unique in many ways. It's often more than just a business. It's a lifestyle, it's a passion, and it's the family, and it's the family legacy. Studies have shown, I think this is an interesting statistic to share, that 88% of family farms or of families hope to pass on that family farm to the next generation. And how many do you think survive? Any ideas? 20? I mean, you're not far off. It's 30%. 30% survive into the second generation. Of that, less than half, 12% survive into the third, and 3% survive into the fourth generation. Do we have any fourth generation farmers here or working on fourth generation?
I figured that out.
Maybe third. Hannah, are you a fourth generation?
Yeah, we successfully passed the baton on. I will be, me and my brothers will be fourth generation.
Well, you are part of the 3%, so congratulations. Much of the family wealth is in assets like land, equipment, buildings, and so it's tied up in a lot of our parts of our business. The owners are used to working and making decisions independently. Does that sound like any of you? I can throw my family under the bus and say they definitely do. Often I hear my dad say, "Nobody tells me anything," because my brothers like to just go do it. And they probably got that from him. But it's true, they work independently. And I think there's some of that that's needed in a farm and ranch too. And often the income that's generated from the business is the retirement plan of the owner. So it's very important that it's treated carefully as it's transferred over. Now,
Tucker says his brother and him would be the fifth generation.
wow, that I don't even have a statistic for, so might be less than.
Say not Tucker. I don't know where I got that from, but
Okay, well, good for you. That's really quite the accomplishment for your family. But like I said, DYSP Extension put together this succession planning series, and this is part of the mission of the series. My goal is to help you get started in understanding the process, and really the getting started is the key step. Also communicating with family and partners, help to empower you to start that process and to also work with professionals in creating a plan that works for you and your family. And getting started, here are some of our goals. With succession planning, my takeaway from this slide is ultimately we give you options, but it is your decision at the end of the day. And so there's still a lot of pressure on you to make those decisions that can be difficult, but we do hope to give you options. And you should all have a workbook, right, Hannah? They might not all have the binder, but you'll have the workbook. Okay, so in the binder, there's information on the 5 modules that are covered. And this would be module 1 that we're going over right now. And you might not get that till later, but you can revisit it. In your workbook, we'll be using that in more depth later on. So you can take that out and write your name on it on the front. And if you go to page 4, you can also fill out some contact information. and some real basic information to just get pen to paper in your workbook. So as we start, we're going to begin with defining succession planning and the components that come together to create a plan. We're also going to discuss the importance of having a plan and starting early. Because what is not started today is never finished tomorrow. I think that's a very simple but powerful statement, because obviously our great ideas have to actually be put into motion a lot of the time. And the hardest part of any project is getting started, making that first step, that first phone call, that first difficult conversation. Many farm and ranch owners or potential successors know that planning is necessary, but like we talked about as we introduced ourselves, maybe you don't know what those first steps are, or if you're like me, you might be hesitant to talk because you fear family conflict. And I think it can be a very, I don't know if the word is passion or a heated discussion, because it means a lot to a lot of us. You put a lot of time into the farm and ranch, and so you fear having those difficult conversations. A vast majority of farmers and ranchers in North Dakota do not have a succession plan in place. They think about it, maybe attend programs about it, but the pen to paper is the part that's just not happening. And so we hope that this program will empower you to not only start it, but also finish your plan. Because when you think about it, there's really a high rate of return on your investment by attending programs such as this. You're protecting that family harmony and your family wealth and those assets and that continued income. So you get a good return on your investment. So I think I can confidently say that we've all invested a lifetime of blood, sweat, and tears into the farm and ranch business. And so succession is really about maximizing that return on your investment. And that's why we put that plan into place to maximize our return. I can also confidently say no two plans are going to be the same. Nobody's going to leave here with the same roadmap in place that they're taking for their own family, because it needs to be personalized to your family goals and your wants and dreams for the business. It might be a family member or a non-family member that's taking over. So it can really look different. We did kind of share what we want out of our succession plan, so I'm going to skip that. Okay, so the value of planning. Out of our planning, we hope, or our succession planning should provide us with all of these, be it financial security for the owner generation throughout life, which is also a sense of worth and ability to pass on a viable family business to the next generation. For the next generation, you might get an opportunity to continue and grow the family business. And I think the one that I admire the most out of these is the clarity that comes through family conversations you've maybe long meant to have, but never quite got around to having, including your hopes, dreams, and commitments and expectations. Along with clarity, you get a vision, as each generation has a chance to talk about their dreams for the future and ways to create that future. And at the end, hopefully you should have some focus, because a good succession plan is a good business plan. And that's where you get that roadmap. So I'd like you to maybe number 1 through 5. If you have this, I suppose if you don't have the binder, you don't have it. But those of you with a binder in front of you, just number it 1 through 5 to what's most important to you. Number 1 and least important number 5, because even though we all have these, we might have some different goals with what we really want to take away. Maybe you've been really concerned about your financial security. Maybe the part that frustrates you the most is you want clarity, and that's what your biggest hope is to get out of the plan. And so common causes for succession failure. Because success is no accident and failure is never the intent. We don't wake up one day and find we're successful. That would be pretty great if it happened that way. But we never do intend to fail. And there are some things as far as succession planning goes that we need to keep in mind as we're putting those plans into place, so we address them to avoid going down that bumpy path. So not having a plan is probably our biggest one. Also taxes, family discord, and failure of the owner to transfer management of the next generation. Having a plan can take care of those tax issues and assist in avoiding that family upset. So if not having a plan is our biggest one, why do you guys think that is? Why we all know we need a plan. What do you think are some of the difficulties that keep us from getting that plan? Anybody have thoughts on that?
Probably being fair.
Being prepared.
Being fair to your rest of the family.
Okay, being fair.
Not really knowing your options.
Right, yep, that was mentioned, not knowing where to start, not knowing all of your options. Any others?
Don't want to upset the apple cart.
What was that?
Don't want to upset the apple cart.
Don't want to upset the apple cart, right? Sometimes you just don't want to rock the boat, face the conflict. And I think another one that we don't talk about, but is also a reason it's hard to plan for succession, is it's hard to face maybe our own mortality or our parents' mortality. Because when you're thinking about the success and the future of that business, you don't want to think about it without you in it when you put so much time into it. So that would be another one. And maybe not knowing the goals, wants, or needs of everybody in your family. There's often some, I would say there's some assumptions with who's going to take over the family business, and they might have a different goal in mind for where they want to see it go or what they want to do in life.
Yeah, I think the failure to transfer management authority is kind of a, if you're still going to be involved, is kind of a tough one.
Right.
To really sit back and let them
Yep.
do their own thing.
Yep. And there's a lot of training that goes into that, right? So if we don't have, if somebody's not willing to, or they have different ideas when it comes to the training and the future of the business, transferring that management is hard because you have to have kind of that same focus.
Mhm.
So there are 5 steps to succession planning. The first 2, gathering information and considering our options, aren't going to happen overnight, and no decisions are being made in those 2 stages, but they are pretty key to the rest of them. When we're gathering information, it's a time to consider what others think, what their visions and goals and wants might be, and needs. All involved should be asking themselves, what do I want? And collect, this is also a stage to collect your relevant financial family information and documents, and acquire a basic understanding of the succession planning process. Again, no decisions are made at this stage. And then with considering options, this is a time to really brainstorm and visit all the possibilities. Again, no decisions are made. It's just a great time to look at an option from every angle. And this might be where you start talking to professionals to research and evaluate what options there might be, such as buy-sell agreements or trusts or gifting, which are all available for transferring the farm ranch to the next generation. So before going on to the next steps, I want you guys to pull out your workbooks. And I think it's on page 6. It's on page 6. Okay, so some of you have started, some of you haven't, but within those few pages, I see your workbook quick. Okay. So on page 5, you can fill in some legal information for family members. Page 6, if you have a power of attorney, you can list those. If you have any current advisors, you can list those on page 7. And then page 8 and 9. If you're thinking about where to find some information once you get home, you can just describe where you're gonna find those personal documents. So I'm gonna give you guys maybe 5 minutes. Hannah, does that sound good? To just start filling some of that out. You might not know, but you might know where you could find it. So there are some sticky notes if you want to flag something in your workbook to revisit when you get home. You guys are in line. Hopefully you have workbooks.
We do for the most part. Jack was he's in the Netherlands, so obviously.
Okay.
And so I'm gonna try scanning some pictures
Okay,
and giving it to him that way.
okay.
So you said pages 5 and 6.
It's like 5 through 8 or so, whatever information you can fill in. Just kind of page through and see what you have on hand or
No
you know, off the
kidding.
top of your head. Or make yourself a note of where you might find that information.
Yeah, that's what the sticky notes are for. So if you don't want to write it all out, but you have it all in a good place, just write family advisors. There's in the second file in the big cabinet, in the laundry room,
Third drawer.
and you just know where to find that information.
Artificial insemination technician, did you kind of make this one up for your family?
No, but you can write in Hannah Nordby.
Okay. Is that where your family meeting quit, Mike?
Where's that at?
Artificial insemination technician?
That's where it ended.
Who am I gonna have guard over my cats? Rod, are you taking on my cats?
No, alert.
So are we, but we still have them. Crazy how that works, right?
Where do most people keep this workbook at?
I would say,
'Cause I'm just flipping through it, there's, you put your legal name, social security number, all of that. And then on the back pages, it says like, let's see, financial assets, account numbers, all of that type of stuff. If retirement account numbers, contact info, if this were to get into the wrong person's hands,
right,
they have your entire life.
Yep.
Everything.
and these
So it
books,
should be closely held in
right, yeah,
something, so I don't know.
a
how.
fireproof box at home.
Magazine rack in the bathroom.
No one's gonna look there. Right. Including us. Right. When our kids find it, they'll go, what the
When we
hell?
attended the training, their idea with the workbook, when they presented it, was that we take it, it's meant to be taken to those meetings with some of your legal advisors or your power of attorney, when you're setting some of that information up and you have that in your workbook and can just pull it up to go over with them. It's meant to make their job and your job easier, so you have it all in one spot.
Somebody suggested saving a lot of attorney fees and labor if you have this prepared.
Yeah, it actually saves you like 400 if you fill it all out, or at least maybe you don't want, maybe some of the stuff you already have in a different file. And so this way you just know that you need to print it out and bring it with you when you go and speak to those different professionals. And if you have all your ducks in a row before you go see them, then you're not gonna spend how many hours going over the basics. And so they told me that it saves you about $400 in legal fees because you don't have to waste all that time in the office being over, well, we need this document, and you gotta go find this and everything. And so whether you decide to fill out the book or you just use it as a guidance about here's what I need to have together, that's totally up to you to decide.
So as you're paging through it or making some notes, I'll go over those other 3 steps. So after you've gathered your information and considered some options, that would be the time that you can start making some decisions. Make some informed decisions, explore some options. You want to make wise and workable decisions in which you're comfortable. And then those need to be communicated with all the parties involved. Also, the next step would be to design, develop, and write a plan. Once you have that plan, you want to work closely with professionals and to create that legal paperwork, and that puts the plan in place. That's where the workbook can come in handy to make that more efficient. Also keep communications open with your owners, successors, and professionals. And you may need to make some changes in your plan to fit within legal and tax regulations. But as changes are made, it will need to be revisited keep working on it, but don't rush it. And I'd say our important last step is to not only implement and put that plan into place, but to monitor it and revisit it, because things do change, and sometimes you have to pump the football. So once you've implemented that plan, follow up by monitoring it and continually to ensure it's working. And don't stop talking. Communication should always be open with everybody involved. So when we think about succession planning, we call it a plan, but really it's more of an umbrella term, because there are actually, this might be overwhelming, but it's 4 plans that are put into the succession planning process. And in your binder, if you have that, there are more complete descriptions for each of the 4 plans, which are business planning, retirement planning, transition, and estate planning. Each is different, but they're intertwined so that while they are separate, they must work together to create a successful succession plan. So for our business plan, this is really meant to help us determine our short and long-term planning for how we're going to operate the business and reach goals. Questions such as what and how to produce, how to market, how to finance are often addressed yearly, as well as longer periods. So you might have a 10-year business plan in place, or a 20-year, but it needs to be also revisited yearly. And it's an opportunity to understand the relationship between the farm and the family, depending on who depends on the income from the operation to meet their living expenses. There are different ideas between generations, but our business plan is where you can discuss some of those differences and identify or clarify any differences and concerns. Well, I don't think you have it in your workbook, but right after your PowerPoint in your binder on, I think, page 1-8, there is a business cycle that will take a quicker or closer look at. There's also a handout in your binder titled Farm and Ranch Business Planning, which offers some greater explanation of this process. So here is our business life cycle. There are 4 basic phases, which is the startup, the growth, the maturity, and the decline. In the startup or introduction phase, your business is really in survival mode, all about creating some, what do you call it, innovation, some ways to keep the business growing, and some ways to sustain confidence and enthusiasm about the future of the business. In our growth phase, that should come from our startup phase, taking that innovation and those things we learned once getting introduced to lead to growth. And you're often expanding your production and your sales during that phase. In our maturity phase, the owner is using managerial skills to steer the business towards greater efficiency. And at that point, we should really have some stability in our business. But now that pieces are in place, you may have a business that starts to struggle with complacency, and that could lead to our last phase, which is decline. And the decline often happens from inaction of starting to meet some of that complacency. If we're relying too heavily on previous plans that aren't meeting changes. And so our blue line is supposed to show what would happen for potential successor being introduced, and how they might bring, what they might bring to the table to address some of that. So our blue line shows our successor, as they may serve an important source of labor and innovation during their startup and growth phase, but they're also working with the owner generation, which provides a source of financial and managerial support, which is often lacking during the successor's startup phase. So I want you to quickly discuss with your family, or if you're here by yourself, you can just mark it by yourself, but look at the life cycle of the business model and mark where you think you might be. If it's during the maturity phase, maybe you've already started working with the successor, and so you're going to put your point on like the growth phase, or they've been introduced, or maybe it's a new model and you're just in the startup phase. So if you have the model in front of you, maybe you don't. I guess that doesn't work if you don't, but just jot down to yourself where you think you might be in the business model, or if you have it in front of you, you can draw a little dot on it. I was thinking about my family, and I don't know where I'd
Could be.
start. For my family, I think I'd maybe
I
say
have no idea.
we've had that introductory phase, or my brothers are starting to take over. There's been some innovation with embryos and different ways of breeding our cattle. So we're maybe in like a growth phase on a new line, but we need to work out some succession planning details and iron that out so that we don't get into a decline. Also, part of our business planning is our long-term our risk management. And when we think about that in terms of our succession plan, we're talking about long-term healthcare planning, because the likelihood that somebody in your family who may need long-term healthcare is actually pretty high. It's not something we want to think about, or we don't often think about planning for. But it is something that can be very expensive and can really, I would say, cripple a farm or ranch operation financially, or have a negative effect on that succession plan if it's accounted for. So your succession plan should consider how best to fund long-term healthcare expenses. Will it be purchased through insurance? Will it be self-insured? Some things like that. In your binder, there is a publication on long-term healthcare planning for agricultural businesses. I don't have the page number written down, but it should be
It goes
somewhere
back
after your
to 1-3.
1-3.
Yeah, it starts over again. It's right after the business life cycle.
Okay, right after the business life cycle in your binder. If you don't have one, you can make a note to find it on page 1-3 once you do get a binder. And then next in our umbrella term, or umbrella, we're talking about retirement planning or semi-retirement for most of us. Because I would say often for a farmer or rancher, it doesn't mean to stop working, but it may mean slowing down, taking some time off to spend more time traveling or with a hobby. And I think you'll find some retirement planning sources we'll look at in a minute on page 15 to 17 of your workbook. So you want to pull that out. I will say, I had two in-laws retire last year and my mom retired. And my in-laws are from the cities. My mom's back on the farm, but their retirements are looking a lot different. I know my husband's parents, they've taken a lot of trips. They're doing snowmobiling trips together. And my mom, she's been full-time grandma since she's been retired, and she's been she got to be the silage truck driver, and she's allergic to corn, so that was a fun process for her. And she's been very involved being the family vet at home still, so she's not really, I don't know if I'd even call it retired, but it looks different for everybody. I know she has gotten to travel more, so maybe that's what she was really getting or hoping to get out of it, was some slowing down, being grandma and getting to travel. But our retirement planning should really include a plan for the role you see yourselves playing in the future of the business, of the farm or ranch, as well as the living space. Maybe you have an expectation to move to town, or the successor has an expectation to move into the farmhouse. So there's that to consider. Also, your lifestyle should be part of the retirement planning, and your healthcare needs, and generating the necessary income to cover that retirement living, because it's not just the business supporting the successor, it's also supporting that owner generation. And that's something that really needs to be stressed, is will it support both? So if you go to page 17 in your workbook, you'll find the retirement expense planning worksheet that can assist you in determining those income needs. And we're going to talk about what you envision your retirement to be as we do this activity. So on pages 15 and 16 of your workbook, you'll find your retirement activity. And I want our owner generations to visit the first page. You're given an opportunity to think about what you will do in retirement, where you will do it. Will you continue to work on the farm or ranch? Will you travel? Will you spend time on a hobby? So take 5 minutes and start filling out the first column. And then on the second page, you'll find a bucket list. And there I want you to figure out what's on your retirement bucket list. So you can draw a picture or write a list of what your retirement dreams are going to be. So dream a little. That's the goal with this activity, because it should be somewhat enjoyable to think about taking that time off.
Right, maybe you want to retire to Arizona, so you don't have to deal with negative 24-degree weather or
wind.
right. Or like, I know my dad, when he wants to retire, they're gonna build a little like lean-to shed. And he always talks about, he's gonna, in the mornings, him and mom are gonna get up and they're gonna drink their coffee, and then he's gonna ride his little motorized chair down the stairs. Because at the bottom, like their house is gonna be on the top, and on the bottom it's going to be like a little shed, and they're gonna have their sheep and their chickens, and he's gonna take his bucket and pick his eggs, and then he's gonna ride his little chair back up the stairs and everything. And so
Saturday's just gonna put on a play.
yeah.
Yeah, I think retirement for my grandpa was him just permanently retiring to the Gator so he could drive around and still be there, but he gotta be the supervisor from the Gator. But he was still at everything. And then for the successor generation, you're gonna do this a little bit differently. I want you to envision the owner generation's retirement. How do you see them being involved on the farm or ranch? Would you like them to continue in certain aspects of farm labor, be it marketing, childcare, bookkeeping, something along those lines? And how do you see them easing into retirement. And then I want you to discuss, if you can, I know that some families split from online and in person, but maybe just make notes that you can discuss at a later date too. But if you are with your family, discuss those retirement plans and see if there are differences, similarities, and be ready to share a little bit if anybody's willing. I'll give you a few minutes to work on that.
I'm pretty sure everybody has a different idea.
Well, just focus on what you want. Don't think about what
No.
Bruce wants or
No.
anybody else. It's just what you want in retirement. So don't look, no peeking, okay?
Yeah.
Am I gonna have to separate you two?
No, I
Okay.
wasn't necessarily meaning him and I.
How are we doing for time? Okay. How much do you have left? Basically, once we talk about transition and estate, then these last two slides just apply. Okay. Then we can take a break. The time for that.
Don't see that very often.
Okay.
Oh. Two lefties over there.
Oh, right.
Wow.
Yeah.
Not till the next week.
That's what John's paying.
Yeah, we were gonna help work.
That's okay. That's right.
At least you could read hers. Mine's questionable.
You wouldn't read mine.
Are the kids left-handed too then? No. And we are only writing and eating. We do, everything else is dominant with our right. So, we're super talented. Mike.
Story.
Yes.
I get two lefties at home too,
Oh, yeah, who is? Heidi is.
Ian Jackson.
Oh, yeah.
We got one too. Nathan.
None of our kids are, I don't think any of our grandkids are there yet so far. Might change.
I always tell them they're the most uncoordinated people I ever seen in my life.
The lefties?
Yeah. Watch Jackson try to put a screw in an outlet or something, it'd drive me
Or
nuts.
teach them how to drive a nail even. You know.
Yeah. But Jackson's, he's ambidextrous. Well,
Mhm. Yeah, that's what we are too, yes. Yeah,
he's-
but it's still, it
Yeah,
is, can be confusing at times,
yeah.
but.
I have trouble just figuring out how to use one
Yeah.
arm, little and both.
That's what I said, we were talented. Can use them both.
I never disagreed with you. You're-
Didn't you? I thought you did. Oh.
Well, I said it's your story. I didn't say.
Oh.
Take it however you want.
Okay. Seems like we just have a few ideas down.
I'm not meaning.
And now,
Have.
does anybody want to share maybe just a fun goal or retirement plan? Or maybe there's some couples here. Did you see differences between your ideas for retirement?
Well, I retired from the power plant in Minnesota.
Okay.
I had the idea to come out here. I'm not sure she really believed I was going to. So we still have our place in Minnesota and we have a place here and it's a constant battle. Are we gonna sell it or are we gonna move back and sell what we have here or what are we gonna do? And it's been 10 years and we still haven't decided.
That's all right.
We're at Minnesota.
Becker, it's about halfway between St. Cloud and the cities. And our daughter lives next door there. And our son lives 8 miles away here. It's a constant.
Mhm.
We have
Mix.
a daughter out there too. At Ada,
Oh, okay. That's
kind of,
kind of basically, yeah, by Moorhead,
More
right?
close to
further
Fargo, probably.
Been there once. I got a blow from it.
Anything else that was discovered for retirement planning? Maybe something we didn't think of, but just did.
How many of you just avoid thinking about retirement? You're gonna live on the farm forever.
Yeah,
It's just easier.
yeah.
Yeah.
I think my retirement would be helping whoever takes over the farm when I want to help.
Right.
And then I'll go do other things when I don't want to help. But I know how that works. I will be there all spring and all fall and half the summer.
Yeah, you're gonna feel obligated.
You feel obligated, yeah.
Yeah.
It's not a big enough operation to hire help.
Oh, that's kind of where I am at. Because he farms and ranches and he has a business on the side.
I think,
But you don't want
my
to,
dad will ever retire. either. I see him sticking around, but I have noticed that I think I can't speak for him, but I do think he wants to travel more. I find that he seems to enjoy that, being the one to deliver bowls and go on some of those trips. And I think I was talking to him the other day and he was complaining about how busy he was. So I know he wants to take some steps back from being involved, but he still wants to be involved. So I see that needs to be discussed to my own family.
I know earlier, Jack, I think is the correct name. He messaged and he was saying that one of the reasons like he sees are things like failures common, even though we all know we need to have a plan, like that's where most people botch up. And his comment was, it's really hard for that older generation to fully let go of control. So maybe you, like I know my dad, he wants to stay and go on ports run and help out when he can, but also he like still remembers when he came home and how his dad was just constantly just like, why are you doing it this way? Or throwing in his 2 cents. And finally dad was like, just, I'm back, like let me try my stuff and learn. And but it was really hard, right? And I mean, some of you I know is working with the younger generation. Do you kind of agree with that sometimes it's hard to compromise, or there's more than one way to get a job done?
but sometimes it is hard to watch them do something. You just bite your tongue and let them do it their way.
And if you know they're gonna fail, that's.
And it doesn't always happen that they fail, but you sure think they're going.
Yeah,
Especially when they're not paying the bills yet.
Mhm.
And then they're,
Yeah.
so we know who's gonna take over the farm. So he's, we should do this, we should do this. So can't do that, can't afford, And then finally I'll just say, well, okay, we'll do whatever you want. Well, I can't make a decision. Well, yeah, so that's where the argument starts. You want to, but you don't want to. And I'm trying to work, I try to work him into that where he's gonna have to start making some decisions.
Or sometimes they want to spend more money than.
Yeah.
Mhm. This is a great
Yeah.
transition into our next topic, because we're gonna talk more about this, but the next part under the umbrella is our transition planning, which involves transferring ownership and management of the business as well as the assets from the current owners to a new owner. I think the first step that maybe comes the easiest is the labor. Well, it can come the easiest, but it often occurs first, is a little more straightforward as a successor comes home to the farm to help with labor. For example, in my family, my dad dying and my brother just naturally took over those duties as my dad's wrist got really bad on him. And so some of those labor expectations just naturally kind of transition to the next person. But with that, there should be some discussion about compensation and adequate salary, maybe a percentage of the profits, reduced housing cost, how that labor is paid for. I think the most difficult one, which we were just talking about, is the transfer of management and decision-making. Although it's difficult, it is really the key to the success of the entire process. Because we want that management and decision-making to be supported by training and a development plan. And this really ensures that the next generation is going to have that necessary knowledge and those skills to take over and to operate that farm business successfully into the future. The last part of transition planning is kind of ironing out all the details with ownership and transferring the assets in the purchase, sale of the farm, gifting, however it may be. Often the most overlooked part of our farm succession plan is the transition plan, and it should involve some mentoring and shifts in responsibility from one owner to the next during an agreed upon time period, rather than just a one-time transaction. It's really going to take some time for this to be set into place. That depends on the, I'd say, complexity of your individual operations. And then last but not least, we have estate planning, which is arranging your affairs to meet your vision regarding the use and transfer of your property before and after death. It may identify your heirs, provide for survivors, manage taxes, and disperse property. Ultimately, the estate plan creates your final disbursement, but an estate plan often is in works long before death. It may provide for transferring of property assets before death, at death, or a combination of the two. And it involves coordination of all your properties and how they're titled, who your beneficiaries are, how the checkbook is set up, your stocks, bonds, cash, real estate, business interests, life insurance. It all needs to be streamlined and incorporated into this plan, because somebody is going to inherit your property regardless of what you do. So having the results of your efforts distributed according to your wishes and protected from the estate and inheritance taxes and other costs of settlement seems only sensible, because you want to know that it's going where you want it to. Everybody with any assets such as a vehicle or a bank account has an estate. And when we die, our assets have to go somewhere. So if you don't have a plan, North Dakota has a plan for you, and that is spelled out in the North Dakota Century Code. There's also a handout in your binder titled Dying Without a Will in North Dakota. It's on page 1-39. I know if it's wrong.
That's right.
Okay, 1-39, Dying Without a Will in North Dakota. The IRS also has a plan for our estate. We can make plans before death to pass along our estate in a manner that minimizes taxes, because if we don't have a plan, we miss the opportunity to protect those. And the IRS actually requires that your estate file a final tax return after your death. So that's another thing to plan for. So that handout should really detail take some of that information and put it in more detail for you. Here is one man's description of estate planning. I like this one. It says, I want to control my property while alive, take care of my loved ones and myself if I become disabled, and upon my death, give what I have to whom I want, the way I want, and when I want. And if I can, I want to save every last tax dollar, professional fee, and court costs possible. So this is really the big goal with estate planning, why we do it. So remember that succession planning is an umbrella term. It encompasses those 4 types of plan. And as we work on each of those and put them together, that's us ultimately creating that succession plan. So when is the best time to start a succession plan? Now. Maybe a few years ago, but it's never too early to start. So starting is the best step.
Right, it's never too early to start, but it can be too late.
Right, it can be too late to start, and we've all seen that happen, where maybe a family is torn apart by disagreements and grief because family members have always had something more pressing to do. There's always something to put than putting a plan on paper. So the tragedy is that the right plan, in addition to sparing that family's grief, might also build a stronger and better business and ensured its success. So the right time to talk about what you, your family, and your operation want, need, and hope to achieve is right now. Getting started can be our biggest challenge. Sitting down and just talking to your family is a great place to start, having those meetings and deciding who's going to be on your team, be it partners and professionals as well as family. Get some advice, make a plan. If it's not perfect, you can fix it, but at least you have a plan. And again, you've all started by coming tonight. So there are some action steps for following to create a plan. There's a checklist of them on page 45 of your workbook. There's a few listed right here. This really is just a suggestion, action step to fill in and add your own personal action steps as you get started in this process. Because you may identify some more key points that you need to do for yourself and your family business. Some things that you can write down on that checklist is a timeline. Having a date, I think, is really key to making sure it happens. I'm expecting in April, and I tell you what, having a plan is helping me figure out pregnancy because I don't know what I'm doing, but I like giving myself action steps or dates to check into things by, because there's a lot you have to do, I guess, for kids. Figuring that out. Having that timeline, when will it get done? Who's gonna do it? You can sign a name, maybe you'll have, you want your successor to check into something, or you want maybe your attorney has a task to do by a certain date, so you can write names as well as to who will do it. That is all I have before we do our definition activity. I guess maybe I should ask, do you guys think you learned a little bit about the starting process of succession planning? Are there any initial questions as we wrap that up? Any questions that we need to check into for the next module, or the next workshop, I should say, next week? There might be questions that you want to write down to actually ask the professionals when they attend next week.
Yeah, so
Your next speaker.
next week we'll have a panel of producers. Just as a teaser to get you excited for next week. I have a younger producer named Aaron Subart, and he's from Robinson, North Dakota. And so he's my age. We went to school together. We were North Dakota State Ambassadors together, and he's at home. They've started the process, but Dad is still very active in the farming and in their operation. And then we have a brother and a brother-in-law from north of Mott that will be joining us. And they formed a partnership and they're a year into their partnership. And so, so we got somebody very beginning, somebody that's like, they got a plan in place, but they're at the beginning of implementing that plan. And then Andrea and Eric Bowman are going to be the third group, and they have gone through it all, and they've got a couple years under their belt. And so I really wanted to make sure that I brought in producers that have success stories, because I'm sure we all can think of more than one unsuccessful transition or one that just didn't happen point blank. And so I know this can be really overwhelming and a lot to take in. And so I think I'm always someone that likes to look on the bright side of things. And so I thought it was important to bring those producers so you could hear from them how to make something happen. So that's what we get to look forward to for next week. But
So keep that in mind. If you have questions for people that are actually within their succession plan, bring those to the meeting next week.
and I know a lot of times people are like, well, how did, Tessa and I, we can't provide any legal advice or anything, but everybody's always curious about like, well, what did you do for your operation? And of course, we have to take into consideration that each operation is unique and you got to do what's best for you. But I know it's just nice to hear like, oh, that's what you did. Okay, like, and that's working out, and that's how, like, that's why it worked for your operation. And so, all of those individuals are going to be open books, and they're happy to share why they did what they did. So you just have to there's no such thing as a stupid question. If you don't want to ask the question, I'll ask it for you.
I do think as we're wrapping up with this module, knowing the terms used in talking about succession planning can be helpful in making maybe more comfortable when working on your plan with professionals or business partners. And that can make planning and asking the questions easier. There's a glossary in your binder, but I did bring some puzzle pieces for this activity, and they should be in front of you. So I'd like you to grab one or two. You'll have to find the puzzle piece that matches either your definition or your term with somebody else on the table. And they're
Guess what?
online.
Guessing they're color coordinated. I know, I think I'll take that one over there.
Yep. And if you're online, there's
There we go.
Value.
How are you? Good. How are you doing?
Maybe.
Hoping this will work.
I see yours on the other end of the table there.
Mine is.
Yes.
Which one?
Well, it matches your color, so.
Yellow and blue over here. I think I get the blue lady down there. What, do you want the
Is there a
sweat
deed
equity?
down there somewhere?
There we go. All right.
Deed.
We're obviously not movers.
No.
Everybody would be like, yeah.
Broke the system. Woo! We got it. Oh, we're too smart. We know the color coordinating.
you got a green to match down there. So if you have a definition, if you want to just look over it in front of you, read it, see if that's what you would guess.
Yeah.
Don't know if anybody's answering online.
I asked them if they can see them, so.
How do you go about picking a professional?
That's a good question.
I mean, the first thing is you
A good
I have a,
professional.
Right, that you can trust.
Yeah.
I don't trust lawyers to start with. I mean, when they're running the country and look what they're doing. So then how do you go about finding one that,
Meets your
you know,
needs.
that you, even to start with, to pick one
Right.
first time to,
Right.
you know.
Have any of you
Need to.
started to work with a professional or found one? Nobody here?
I had a will done on my own. I got a computer program. So that's as far as I've gone. I mean, I haven't to whether it's,
Are they legal?
I've
is that
learned,
right or not right? I don't know, but it's something. I mean, somebody would have something
On
to
the
base
computer program?
a decision off of.
Mhm.
it's pretty easy. It's much easier to learn who not to use.
I guess. I'm trying to
But yeah,
answer
kind
that.
of
I mean-
expensive.
But you, but I mean,
Question
you
from-
hear stories
Right.
or, and like the first one we went through,
What's
that,
the final
yeah,
question?
we already had a bad
What's in the
experience.
computer
So
program for the will?
you're right. Word of mouth.
Yeah.
is basically what you gotta go by.
Right.
You know, I checked on those online wills and such,
Or just?
and I checked with a lawyer. And he said there's so many differences from state to state to state that those online ones don't really cover. So it's questionable. It might be legal, but there's more that needs to be added or deleted from some of it. So
Okay, or I'll
Just
find somebody who can
information.
answer that
So you
question.
can't,
And it's much better if it's notarized.
Right.
It's much better if it's notarized.
Yeah.
Yeah.
so can you get online wills that are state specific?
some cases.
Yeah, this one was, it said it was, you had to pick your state. That was quite a few years ago, so it's probably outdated by now.
I think with wills, as long as anything's better than nothing.
Right,
Yeah.
right.
So even if it's not 100% accurate, it's better than not having anything.
Yeah, then at least they got some idea what you wanted at one time. My other comment would be, one of my favorite sayings is plans and schedules are only something to deviate from.
Hmm.
About right.
That's, yeah, you know, I guess that's been one of my things. I don't know who to go to with that.
I don't know if anybody knows Pam Geiger with Farm Credit in Mandan. My parents worked a lot with her when they did some of their initial meetings. We still haven't had family discussions, but they've put some stuff into a trust, I believe, and they worked with Pam Geiger at Farm Credit to kind of get started.
But there's a laundry list of people, and I think a lot of times it's just important to, you know, ask those people that have gone through it. And I think a lot of times that word of mouth is the best
Way
way.
to get a suggestion, someone
Right.
has done it.
Yeah, I think that's really the best way to go about it. And yeah, ask people. I know there's resources on our community and yeah, that you can, you just have to be open that you're thinking about succession planning, and then, talk to your loan officer, talk to your insurance agent, and talk to those that you feel comfortable that have been through the process. Talking, communicating, that's what we all love to do, right?
Kind of fit in with the lawyers then. You're insured.
Well, should I end
I talked to
the?
my
Yeah,
wife
you can go
the other
ahead
night,
and
We
end that.
still have.
You're online and haven't submitted your questions, quick submit, because I'm gonna hit end poll. If you didn't fill it out, we'll just go over it.
What was it?
No, we got at least one. Okay, so who had succession?
I do.
And what was the definition of succession?
A term used to describe transfers of asset ownership through inheritance, gifting, preferential sale, or other means that fulfill the wishes of the person for persons with present ownership of the assets.
Correct. Yep, that's our definition for succession, or a textbook definition in our binder. So the answer to our first question was succession, if you're online. Who had a deed? I'm going to read the definition for deed.
A legal instrument used to transfer a title of real property from one owner to another in the eyes of the law.
That is correct. Online, our participant got deed correct. Not trust or will. Who had a fair market value?
We have that. It's the market price for an asset as would be agreed to by a willing buyer and a willing seller.
Yep, that's correct. So our fair market value is the market price for an asset that is agreed to by a willing buyer and seller. So not agreed value, but fair market value.
So I have a question on that.
You have a question on that?
Right, yeah, no, okay, if that's true, why if you sell something, I sell something to you and the government decides that's not right, they can tax because you have a, I forgot what the term is. There's a value that you didn't charge him for, that the asset was really worth in their eyes.
So you undervalue it. What he's getting at is like if you'd sell your land to your kid for $100 an acre,
Right.
you can't do that.
Well, you can, but then he
Well, then
has
you're
to
gonna, but he's
pay
got to pay the
a gift
difference,
tax on
right?
a certain amount of it.
I think
Because
that's
it's not actual market value.
right, and that's really why you want to make sure that you're working with the right professionals, because they're going to be up to date with all that information and they'll be able to red flag things that be like, I know that's how you want to pass it on, but how you have it set up, it's not going to work out that way. And those rules are always changing and everything, which is why, like, Tessa and I can't exactly say that, but it's important to be asking and talking with those professionals and making sure they look over what you, and also being able to come to them and say, okay, I want to pass on all of this at the fairest price and pay the least amount of taxes, and they can help you pick. Maybe a trust is the right way to do it, or maybe an LLC is the best way to do it. Like, they can, based on your goals, they can help direct you. Right. I know that doesn't answer your question, and I'm sorry, but
The other thing about what Mike was talking, I just came across it the other day, but if you sold it for $100 an acre, and there's a step up basis, and maybe Seth, you know more about it than I do, but like my dad, if he'd have sold it to me for $100 an acre, then when I passed it on to my kids, they'd have more capital gains tax and more funeral tax. But we got to move it up to today's market value, a stepped up basis, because he didn't sell it or
You
transfer.
had to die first.
Yeah.
You had to die first before you.
Yep.
That's
Mm.
Yeah,
exactly.
but there's part of the fair market value thing, a little bit tangential, but it's really complex, I guess.
So it's something you should probably work out with one of your advisors or those legal professionals as well, instead of just writing down $100 an acre. So I didn't worry. Who had a testator?
The one who writes or has written and signs a will.
Yep. So some of you had started your wills, it sounded like, or were using a program. Have you had somebody sign off on one? Anybody here work with a testator?
I did.
You did?
Mhm.
Was that an easy process, did you think, or did they make it?
It's pretty easy.
Okay. So that was our answer to number 4. Who writes and signs the will? Number 5, who had sweat equity?
I do. The increased financial value of a farm or other business over and above money or tangible assets contributed, which was created by uncompensated mental and or physical efforts.
Right, so yep, that's what our sweat equity stands for, our textbook definition. If you have multiple family members, when you're working with succession planning, often that's part of the consideration. I know when there was succession planning for my dad and his brothers, with my grandpa, there was a lot more sweat equity, I would call it, that my dad had put into the family business. And they talked about, you know, the transfer of the business. It was who's going to be here, who's doing some of that active labor. And that was one of the big considerations as well. So number 6, online, who had right of first refusal?
The right to have the first opportunity to purchase a piece of property when such becomes available, or the right to meet any other offer on the subject property.
Yep, that is correct. You got it correct online. For 7, who had trust?
Ownership and control of property by a third party trustee who manages the property and pays the income to a named beneficiary according to the instructions given by the person setting up the trust and who transfers property into it.
Yep, that one's also correct. It sounded like that was one we were more familiar with, or there had been some experience with trusts from our attendees. Question 8. Who had buy-sell agreements?
Formal agreements that spell out terms of ownership transfers in case of death, divorce, disability, dissolution. They include information on valuation, discounts, and any restrictions on asset transfers.
Yep, so online, buy-sell agreements are definitely part of our succession plans, or can be, but that is our definition for them, is that formal agreement that spells out that ownership. And our last one was income statement.
A document that lists all expenses, income, and changes in inventory for a business during a specific period of time.
Yep. Well, that's another important piece of paperwork that needs to be included when we're doing some succession planning and getting those documents together. Stop sharing. Oh, Hannah, are we ready for a break before? Okay. Any last questions or final thoughts on succession planning? Online too? Nope. Then let's eat Cheetos.
Yeah, let's take like a 5-10 minute break. They did expire in September. I ate one this morning though. The Cheetos were okay. The Doritos are still a little stale, so we decided not to put them out on the table. But there's water too. We just 5-10 minutes or
We all
so.
eat, then we can't hear each other's crunch. So it's a
We're gonna see what
participation.
happens to you.
Maybe they're so stale they don't crunch, huh? They're good, have at it.
Yeah. Roger was here this fall. And we were eating some, we're gonna have to taste. He asked if I had any mustard, so I grabbed it. And he went, "We ate it." And then after we were sitting there and he went, This is 2016. Wow,
Well,
that's old. Right. I'm not a mustard user, so I
can't. So the horrible mustard was, I thought maybe he was trying to cover up the taste, whatever he was eating.
no. No, the mustard was.
Over to
2016.
49.
That never goes bad.
Lemon and 49.
But it's yellow mustard. It looked more like brown spicy mustard.
You know, Bob and
Had
Nola
green
Deeds.
stuff growing on.
Right,
Bob and Nola
exactly.
Deeds.
Just know the name.
Those are my parents.
Okay.
What did we do in the day when they never put the expiration?
We
on?
ate it.
You ate it, and if it didn't taste right, threw it away.
Yeah.
You know, but these now people look at, oh, day over, garbage, I'm like you guys are kidding.
The recommendation.
Yeah, recommendation.
Right.
Tessa.
That's why about 40% of the food. goes out.
Hey, Tyler, could we see your wife instead of you? I'm kind of tired of you.
You can hear you.
I think he's ignoring us.
Yeah.
so.
What'd you say, Bruce?
Just wondering if you were the featured speaker or something, where we got you in the big screen now.
Well, that's a good place for me, isn't it?
Yeah, something like that.
I had to turn you guys down because all I hear is you chewing chips.
Go bathroom first, and then, yeah, I think, yeah, that might not be a bad idea. We really weren't talking a whole lot on the chat, other than Jack had to just add in.
Any puzzle pieces left over? One.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Was this your first time?
Yeah.
Oh.
You know if it's a boy or girl?
It's a boy. We were both- I realized we were too impatient people to not figure it out ahead of time.
It's good to have a boy first.
And second and third and fourth. When that girl comes, that's the last one you'll have.
That's how it worked in my family. I say they stopped at perfection.
Yeah, there you go.
Too many different colors of pink. Leggings and tights, and bows and hair.
Good deal, Jack. Ours was a.
Right.
Mine's both. She's dresses, but she's climbing trees in her dresses. So,
My girl with four other older brothers. She's
oh yes,
tough. Yeah,
I bet she would be.
but she rules the rules. She thought we quit with perfection too. I said, no, we quit because we had 5. Changing the oil in her car the other day.
She did?
Yeah.
Wow. Where the boys did.
She was gonna have the boy doing it. Your car, you go do it.
Yeah.
That way you know it's done right.
Yeah.
I have to do the next time. They show me how to do it.
He called me one day. And she goes, Dad. She's going to school up in Bismarck. She says, why does my car beep when I'm putting air in the tire? So what are you talking about? She goes, well, I'm putting air in the tire. So it starts going off. said, oh, must have a sensor that tells you that you got enough in it. And she goes, yeah, I thought Isaac was beeping the horn at me and I hollered at him and I'm like, why is your boyfriend sitting in the car when you are outside airing up your tires?
At 30 degrees below.
Independent woman, that's
Yeah.
why.
Well, probably because he don't know how to do it, he said. I'm like, oh my God. Hope he's gonna be a lawyer, a doctor or something then.
Well, I didn't know that they beat by you, but I had a thing.
Did the same thing.
And it beat at me. I'm like, oh, that was.
Huh,
nice.
What
You
the
know,
heck?
I didn't know if they did that.
Too fancy.
Yeah, mine must not be new enough.
It's not that new.
Oh.
Yeah, I never realized.
Huh. I am always thankful though that it shows,
Yeah,
check your tire.
yeah.
Then you don't know they're flat,
No,
or you run them and then they destroy them, and
no,
that's a pretty neat deal.
yeah, it is. Yep, indeed. Much better than when they first came out and it just said low tire, but it didn't tell you how low it was, so you had to get out and look. Right.
What I hate, people look at that too much though. They'll come in and go, I got 3 tires with 39 in them and this one only has 38.
Oh my God.
Always open the door, throw a hose out and put 1 pound of air in. They're not that accurate.
Right.
Don't worry about it.
No, when it gets down to 14, you start to worry. Am I gonna make it home?
When CM texts you and tell you got a problem, or Buick does that, like the minute that tire light comes on, all of a sudden get an email at home.
Really?
Text and, yeah,
Wow.
or check engine light or
Right.
anything like that, it'll.
Well, you'll be glad that you didn't have my sending you emails then the one day, because I had all 4 tires doing weird things.
That was when it was really cold, I'm sure.
It was.
Yeah.
So I said, Dalton, you really got to bring it in today and warm it up. See what's wrong with it.
Didn't see myself in the We're just gonna make this a lot bigger. And we're gonna make that smaller. Okay, so I think if we're all good to go, we'll go ahead and get started with module 2. One thing, I don't have copies of it right now, but I know one question had to do with, I have a list of certified succession planners. So these are people that have gone through the same training I have gone through, and they recognize like the need for succession planning, like assistance with succession planning and everything. I'm not saying that this is the most up-to-date list, because Jana Block was on it. And I was telling her that, she's like, why do they still have me on here for? I took that so long ago, I'm not up to date with it, but, you know, the big thing is like, we don't endorse individual professionals, but we do have a list of professionals who have become certified succession planners. Tessa mentioned Pam. Pam has gone through the training before. We have Melissa. Sure, I can't pronounce her last name, but she's going to come down the last night, and she's also taking the training too. And so there's a list of those individuals, but really the best way, like we were saying, is by word of mouth to figure out the right people to talk to. And these individuals are just here to like help you think through that process, right? They're succession planning people. So I just wanted to mention that if this is something that you would like me to share, I'm happy to make some copies and I can bring it to the next session that we have. But let me go ahead and we want to, that's not what I want. I know I'm supposed to be a millennial and I'm supposed to understand technology and everything, but no.
Um,